Disclaimer: the following program is designed to offend, provoke, and challenge your religious sensibilities. It contains content that will likely offend anyone who holds religion sacred. This is for those with thick skin or a taste for the harsh truth. If you're easily offended or cherish your religious views, please turn off now. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. You have been warned. All right, before we jump into this next chapter of Unholy Chaos, this is episode 43 of Troll the Verse. 43, which means that if you're just joining us now and wondering why the Bible sounds like a rejected fantasy novel, that's because it kind of is, and you've got a lot of catching up to do. So do yourself a favor and check the playlists on the channel. We've got full series for Genesis, Matthew, and Revelation, each starting right at chapter 1, because unlike your pastor's favorite sermon, we actually read the whole thing. Context isn't optional around here. It's the whole point. And if you're here for the Samson saga, this is actually the 3rd chapter covering him, so go hit that Judges playlist and start from the beginning. Trust me, the meltdown starts early. And while you're at it, like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe, not because we're trying to sell you a mug with a verse on it, but because you clearly belong here. Smash that like button if you live for brutal Bible breakdowns. And hey, if you're a believer who thinks this all makes perfect sense, feel free to rage click that dislike button. We know reading's not your strong suit. And today is special. We've got Samson going full nuts with a fox arson army, murdering people with barnyard bones, crying to God for water like a dehydrated war criminal, and somehow still being treated like a national hero. It's craziness that makes absolutely no sense, and yes, we're reading it exactly as written. Let's get started. And we're back, and Samson is just now realizing that he abandoned his own wife. After storming off like an overgrown toddler, killing 30 guys for their clothes, and sulking at his parents' house, he suddenly decides it's time to check back in on his wife. Oh, and just so you know what time it is, it's wheat harvest season, which was basically the ancient version of Thanksgiving. Peak food supply, everyone's working in the fields, gathering the grain that keeps civilization running. Just keep that in the back of your mind, because something very flammable is coming. And what's his grand romantic gesture when he goes to see his wife he left? A goat. That's it. He shows up unannounced, fully expecting to pick things up where he left off, and his peace offering is livestock. Not an apology, not flowers, not even a decent conversation, just a goat. Because nothing says, "I'm sorry for vanishing after a murder spree," quite like livestock. And he doesn't even try to talk to this chick. His first words aren't, "Hey, how have you been?" or "Sorry about the wedding disaster." Nah. He shows up, drops off the goat, and immediately tries to get into her bedroom. Because in Samson's mind, everything is totally fine, and she's just been waiting around for him like a loyal pet. And that's when her father stops him and drops the bomb of, "Oh yeah, I thought you hated her, so I gave her to your best man. But hey, her younger sister is available." This man tries to do a last-minute wife swap like it's no big deal. Just, "Yeah, I gave your wife away, but here's a new one, so problem solved." And what's even better, the younger sister is apparently the better option. Well, according to the father anyway, because daughter rankings are a thing in the Bible now. But how long has Samson actually been gone? The text says after some days, but this wasn't just a few days. It had to be long enough for the father to assume Samson was never coming back, arrange another marriage, and go through with it. Meaning Samson wasn't just sulking, he was gone long enough for his wife to move on without him. Yet he's completely shocked that she's not just waiting around for him like nothing happened. And this is where Samson finally decides to take things personally. After all the messes he's created so far, now he feels wronged, and his response, his justification for what's coming is, "This time I am blameless when I do evil to the Philistines." Notice the choice of phrase here, this time. So last time, when he went on a murder spree over a riddle, that was on him. He's flat out admitting he knew that the last murder spree had no justification, but now that his wife has been given away, this time he's justified in committing evil. So I guess there's a scale to Samson's violence. If it's about a bet, unjustified murder. If it's about his pride, well, that's totally fine. And let's be crystal clear, he abandoned her, she didn't walk out on him, he walked out, didn't say a word. And now he's acting like he's the victim. This is the most one-sided revenge mission in history, and just to make it even dumber, his revenge isn't against the father who gave her away, it's not against the man who married her, no. He's going after the Philistines as a whole, because in Samson's mind, this is their fault. I seriously cannot wait to see the Olympic level line drawing that's about to go down in the comments over this next section. Last time, y'all were out here defending corpse honey with vulture bees from South America. Like somehow Yahweh personally airlifted jungle scavenger bees across 3,000 miles and dropped them into a lion carcass in Iron Age Canaan, just so Samson could have a honey snack on his way home. Never mind the minor detail that these bees wouldn't even survive the climate. So please, please, I am actually living for the excuses we're about to hear about the fox situation. Because if that last chapter sparked bug lectures, I can't even imagine the amount of gymnastics required to justify flaming animal warfare. Go ahead, stretch those apologetic muscles. I'll be in the comments with popcorn, watching you twist yourselves into pretzels, trying to make this stupidity we're about to talk about work. All right, so Samson is mad, but instead of taking it up with his wife's father, the guy who actually gave her away, he decides to punish the entire Philistine economy because, logical responses and all that. And how does he do it? Oh, just the most insane method possible. Samson somehow captures 300 foxes. And let's just stop there. How? Foxes are skittish, fast, and generally not cooperative. The average person couldn't catch one fox, let alone 300. Did he chase them down one by one, use some kind of biblical fox wrangling technique? And where did he keep them while rounding up the rest? A fox holding pen? A sacred storage pit? A giant net labeled "Do Not Open," chaos inside? The text gives zero explanation. It just casually says, Samson goeth and catcheth 300 foxes. Like that's totally normal, no struggle, no effort, just 300 foxes at his disposal, ready for arson duty. And then we hit the real insanity. He ties them together in pairs by the tail. That's 150 fox duos, tangled, panicking, biting, flipping out. And because that's not cruel enough, he shoves a burning torch between their tails and sets them loose in the Philistines' crops. Let's stop here for a minute to fully appreciate how stupidly complicated this is. He had to grab two wild, thrashing foxes and tie their tails together 150 times, then attach a lit torch to each pair, meaning he's starting fires while holding live animals, then release them at just the right time because if he messes up, they run back at him. And somehow he does this 150 times without getting shredded or lit on fire. This isn't efficient. This is cartoon villain nonsense. If he just wanted to burn the crops, he could have grabbed a torch and done it himself. But no, he builds a fox fire army because Samson can't do anything the normal way. And the logistics, a total nightmare. Where did he store 300 foxes? Did he build a makeshift fox warehouse overnight? How did he stop them from killing each other? Foxes are vicious and territorial. How did he tie their tails together without losing fingers? Most people can't even get a cat into a carrier. Samson grabbed 300 wild foxes and walked away fine. And fox tails? They're not ropes. They're in cartilage. How did he tie them tight enough to hold a flaming torch without snapping them off? And then there's the fire problem. He's lighting 150 torches while restraining 300 panicked animals. How? Did he light them one by one, use a stick between the tails first? Did he invent an Iron Age flamethrower? And how did he not set himself on fire? One spark near a fox's butt and that thing's turning into a flaming tornado. Now multiply that by 300, and the worst part? It works. Somehow. The foxes panic, sprint into the fields, and torch the Philistines' grain, vineyards, and olive groves, meaning Samson in one afternoon destroys their entire food supply. This isn't just revenge. This is scorched earth warfare. And let's not forget why he's doing this. Not because the Philistines attacked Israel, not because they enslaved his people, not because of war or oppression. Nope. Because his father-in-law gave his wife to someone else. This is a domestic dispute that escalated into agricultural terrorism. This isn't revenge. This is a full-blown natural disaster orchestrated by the pettiest man alive. And if you think the Philistines are just going to let this slide, think again, because this war is just getting started. And for anyone still trying to argue that this is just symbolic, yeah, okay, it probably is, because it would have to be. This story is literally impossible. No human being is catching 300 wild foxes, tying them together in coordinated fire squads, and unleashing synchronized agricultural arson like some Iron Age Looney Tune. But here's the problem. Calling it allegory doesn't make it better. It might make it less stupid logistically, but it makes it even worse theologically. Exactly what kind of divine lesson is this supposed to be? Don't trust your in-laws or you might commit eco-terrorism? Let's walk through the logic of this for a second. Samson throws a tantrum over a riddle, abandons his wife, and she gets remarried, probably because everyone thought he was gone for good. So when he comes storming back, does he talk to the father-in-law? The new husband? Of course not. He blames the entire Philistine population and burns down their entire food supply, wheat, vineyards, olive groves, because he got his feelings hurt. This isn't holy judgment, this is a rampage. So if this is allegory, that actually makes it worse, because then the moral is, when your personal life crumbles, torch the innocent with symbolic fire and animal abuse. What's that supposed to teach? Revenge is sacred if it's creative enough? God approves of mass destruction when your relationship fails? That's not theology, that's psychopathy and straight up stupidity. Apologists love to get poetic here. The foxes represent Samson's cleverness. Great. Then maybe don't have him torture live animals to make the point. It's a metaphor for Israel's enemies being divided and consumed. Really? Because the text offers no commentary, no reflection, no spiritual takeaway, just fire, chaos, and more fire. Samson is God's tool of judgment. So God's plan for saving Israel involves setting foxes on fire because someone broke an engagement. And the worst part, the Bible doesn't hint that this is symbolic. No moral, no explanation, no wink. Samson is portrayed as a real man, doing real things with real consequences, and still getting divine endorsement. So if this is literal, it's insane, and if it's allegorical, it's a moral nightmare. Either way, it's not wisdom. It's just violent nonsense pretending to be scripture. Oh look, actions have consequences. After Samson's unhinged foxfire arson massacre of crops, the Philistines immediately start asking, who the hell did this? And when they find out it was Samson, do they go after him? No, that would make too much sense. Instead, they burn his wife and father-in-law alive because, nothing solves a problem quite like torching random people. And what does Samson do when he finds out? Does he stop for even 1 second to reflect on his actions, feel any kind of regret, realize that maybe his rampage got innocent people killed? Of course not. He takes zero responsibility. Instead, he decides more killing is the answer. Though ye do thus, nevertheless I am avenged on you, and afterwards I cease. This is literally Samson's fault. If you hadn't gone full psychopath with flaming foxes, none of this would have happened. But sure, go ahead and act like the Philistines just randomly did this out of nowhere. And we need to remember, this story isn't being told from a neutral perspective. These are Israelite documents written by Israelites for Israelites in the middle of centuries of conflict with the Philistines. Of course they're going to spin the narrative. Of course they're going to make the Philistines look irrational, dangerous, and evil at every turn. Even when it's obviously not the case, it's ancient wartime propaganda dressed up as holy writ. And then we get the infamous line, he smiteth them hip and thigh, a great smiting. What does that even mean? Scholars aren't sure. It could be a Hebrew idiom for total annihilation, or it could mean he hacked them apart limb by limb. Either way, the message is pretty clear. Samson goes absolutely feral. This isn't justice. This is butchery. Then after this mass murder spree, he disappears. No grand speech, no follow-up, no heroic closure. He just ghosts the whole situation and hides in a cave. And let's not forget the entire plan here consisted of step 1, burn down their food supply over a personal grudge. Step 2, get mad when your actions cause your ex-wife's death. Step 3, go on another killing spree in response. Step 4, retreat into a cave like a guilty child who broke something and doesn't want to face the consequences. And now the Philistines come knocking. The moment Samson runs off to sulk in a cave, the Philistines invade Judah. They set up camp in Lehi, ready for war, because at this point, they're done playing games. They're not just mad, they're mobilizing. No more flaming animals, no more excuses. They want Samson, and they're willing to go straight into Israelite territory to get him. And how do the men of Judah react? Do they rise up? Do they prepare to fight back? Do they defend Samson, their so-called deliverer? Nope, they immediately run up to the Philistine army and basically go, hey guys, why are you here? And the Philistines give the most obvious answer imaginable, to bind Samson. We're just doing to him what he did to us. So basically they're saying, we're here because your local meathead burned our crops. got people killed, and then ran off like a coward. Now, most biblical scholars and preachers love to frame this moment as Judah being faithless cowards, too spineless to stand up to oppression, too afraid to rally behind God's chosen judge. That's the default sermon point. They feared man more than God. But let's be honest. If you just read the text without assuming Samson is a hero, the Judahites actually seem pretty reasonable. They're not cowards. They're fed up. They know Samson didn't start a liberation movement. He started a firestorm over a personal grudge. He didn't bring salvation, he brought retaliation. From their perspective, the guy is a liability, not a leader. He's not delivering them from the Philistines, he's making sure the Philistines never leave. So this isn't cowardice, it's clarity. And here's where Judah absolutely folds, but I don't think it's because they're scared. I think it's because they're done pretending Samson is worth defending. 3,000 of them, yes, 3,000 Israelites, go down to Samson's cave, not to rally behind him, not to protect him, to arrest him. And what do they say when they get there? Not Samson, lead us. Not, let's throw off our chains together. No, they say, do you not know the Philistines rule over us? What is this that you've done to us? That's the key. They're not even blaming the Philistines anymore. They're blaming him because they've seen enough to know Samson's not fighting for Israel. He's fighting for his ego. And Samson's response? As they did to me, so I did to them, which is classic Samson logic throughout these whole chapters. This is basically a child's defense when they say, they started it. No, Samson, you burned down their entire food supply because your ex got remarried. That's not justice. That's a tantrum. So now Judah, who's supposed to be the tribe of kings and leaders, is looking at their God-appointed judge and going, yeah, we're going to go ahead and turn this guy in, not because they're weak, but because they know this guy is not helping. If anything, he's the reason the Philistines are here in the first place. From their point of view, Samson didn't deliver them, he made everything worse. He didn't defeat their enemies, he provoked them. And Samson, he just rolls with it. Swear to me, lest ye fall upon me yourself. So he's just like, whatever, fine, just promise you won't kill me. And they're like, oh no, we won't kill you. We'll just hand you over to the Philistines so they can do it. And somehow that satisfies him. So they tie him up with 2 thick brand new ropes, because apparently fresh rope is the holy solution, and march him straight to the Philistines like a sacrificial lamb. But what none of them seem to realize is that rope, no matter how new, is not going to hold what's coming next. Because this guy may be a disaster, but he's still about to break loose and remind everyone why you don't try to contain Samson with string. And here's the part that really pisses me off. I was taught this story as a child, first by Jehovah's Witnesses, then later by mainstream Christians. And you know what? They never actually read the story. Not all of it. They cherry pick a few heroic sounding lines, skip over the messy details, and slap on some vague allegory about strength, faith, or deliverance. But when you actually sit down and read the whole thing, verse by verse, no skipping, the allegory falls apart completely. The story they say is in here just isn't. The theology they pretend exists, nowhere in sight. All that's left is a blood-soaked ego trip carried out by a man-child with supernatural muscles and zero impulse control. The ropes didn't even last 5 seconds. Samson gets dragged to Lehi, fully tied up, and the Philistines start celebrating, they're cheering, shouting, ready to finally kill him. Bad move. Because as soon as they start gloating, the spirit of Jehovah shows up again, and, shockingly, Samson's ropes just melt off like burnt string. Just poof, gone. Of course, the spirit of Jehovah shows up right on cue, not when his wife was being burned alive, not when Israel needed leadership, not when innocent people were dying, but now, when they're about to make him pay. And then we get to the legendary weapon of choice, Samson versus the Philistines, Jawbone edition. So Samson is standing there unarmed, surrounded by Philistines. What does he do? Does he grab a sword, a spear, a rock? No. He looks around, sees a fresh donkey jawbone, picks it up and goes full medieval on 1,000 men, pause, 1,000, with a donkey's jawbone, First of all, where did this fresh donkey jawbone even come from? A fresh jawbone means the donkey just died recently. Who left a dead donkey lying around here? And the fact that it's fresh means it still has tissue or blood on it, which, by the way, makes it unclean according to Levitical law. So while this guy is supposedly God's chosen judge, he's just casually grabbing bloody animal parts and using them as weapons, because who cares about ritual purity when there's 1,000 people to kill? And just to be clear, this wasn't a mob of pitchfork-waving villagers. The Philistines had encamped in Judah. They came mobilized. This was 1,000 men, organized, armed, and ready to execute a public example out of Samson. And these weren't Bronze Age bumpkins either. The Philistines were Iron Age powerhouses. Archaeology shows they had iron-tipped weapons, trained militias, and military dominance in the region. And if that wasn't enough, he immediately discards the weapon like it was nothing. This one-hit wonder donkey bone just gets tossed aside, and Samson renames the place Ramath-lehi, which literally means Jawbone Hill, because when you commit mass murder with farm animal bones, the natural thing to do is slap your kill count on a landmark like it's a medieval version of tagging your KD ratio on the map. Call of Duty, anybody? I'm not even going to cover the next few verses, but I'll show them on the screen. It's just Samson whining about how he's thirsty now, and God is going to leave him to die, and so sends him his own personal water fountain out of the ground. Then the last line says, "He judgeth Israel in the days of the Philistines for 20 years. The end of this chapter. It's super dumb. Let me remind you, because I know someone in the comments is already hyperventilating into their study Bible. I'm not twisting scripture. I'm not taking anything out of context. I'm just reading it too plainly. The only thing I'm guilty of here is refusing to slap a halo on behavior that is clearly disgusting. Everything I lay out is directly in the text. So, am I wrong? Not even slightly. So, let's just recap this mess we've been dredging in so far, shall we? Up to this point, the Philistines have killed exactly 2 people, Samson's ex-wife and her father. Brutal? Sure. But let's rewind. Who threw the first punch? Samson did. He kicked this whole mess off by marching into Ashkelon, murdering 30 Philistine men and stripping them for their clothes, just to pay off a riddle bet that he should have never made in the first place. That in no way was justice. And the Philistines, they didn't even retaliate. He walks away scot-free back to his father's house. They could have hunted him down right then, but they didn't. Why? Because maybe they weren't looking for war. Maybe they saw what it was, a weird psycho meltdown, not a national threat. But then Samson escalates again. His wife gets given to another man, and instead of dealing with it like a grown adult, he burns down their entire food supply during harvest season. He literally launches a food war because his ex got remarried. And let's not gloss over what that actually means. Burning down wheat vineyards and olive groves during harvest season isn't just petty, it's catastrophic. This is an ancient agrarian society. Crops weren't just property, they were survival. Destroying that much food could have easily led to widespread hunger or famine. People would have died because of this. Children, families, entire villages. And why? Because Samson got dumped. That's it. He scorched a nation's livelihood over a bad breakup. Look, I'm a red-blooded American. I can't even believe I'm saying this, but it's what the damn text says. And when the Philistines retaliate, not against Israel, not against the nation, but against the people directly involved, he slaughters more of them, this time smiting hip and thigh. So let's be clear. He's not liberating Israel. He's not fighting oppression. He's not standing for righteousness. He's just spiraling every time his ego gets bruised. This isn't leadership of any kind. It's egomania with a body count. And the Bible wants you to believe this is a holy man, a judge of Israel? Please. The Philistines didn't even know what hit them. One minute they're managing a stable border and celebrating a successful harvest. The next, they're getting burned alive, butchered for clothing, and massacred by a lunatic wielding a donkey's jawbone. If this is what a judge of Israel looks like, then Yahweh's chosen people don't seem that fantastic to me. A lot of you aren't going to like this video. It's going to definitely upset some of you, but this is just what I see when I read it. You can block the channel or whatever. I really don't care. I refuse to say what isn't there. So if you like this breakdown, if watching a meathead commit war crimes with livestock bones brought you even a shred of clarity or cathartic rage, do the thing, like the video, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. We've got one more chapter of Samson's greatest hits coming up, Judges chapter 16, and it's a hot mess. After that, we're closing the book on Judges for right now and heading somewhere new. This ride isn't over yet.